The courtroom was silent. Not the kind of silence you hear when people are waiting. No, this was the type of silence that freezes time, that shatters the air, that screams louder than any voice ever could. And in the middle of that silence, Prince Harry collapsed. One moment he stood, jaw clenched, shoulders squared, a royal raised in discipline. And the next, his knees buckled, his head dipped forward, and he fell. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Not because of a punch, not because of exhaustion, but because of one thing: truth. Truth wrapped in a single sheet of paper. Truth sealed in an envelope that had remained hidden for decades. Truth that confirmed what whispers, rumors, tabloids, and internet conspiracies had long suggested: that the Duke of Sussex, second son of King Charles III and the late Princess Diana, may not be Charles's son at all. Are you ready for the story? Because this isn't just about royal gossip. It's not about another scandal or some media frenzy. This is a story about identity, betrayal, inheritance, and power. And it begins with a question that's haunted the monarchy for years. What if Prince Harry was never really a Windsor? Let's go back, before the courtroom collapse, before the DNA test, before Meghan, before the tell-all interviews and the Netflix deals and the books and the exile. Let's go back to the one truth that's been hiding in plain sight for over 30 years, the secret that could destroy the very foundation of Britain's royal family. They called it a fairy tale marriage, didn't they? Charles and Diana, the poised prince and the shy kindergarten teacher. The wedding watched by over 750 million people. The balcony kiss. The golden carriage. The hope of a modern monarchy. But behind the polished smiles and pearl tiaras was a marriage that cracked before the honeymoon was over. Charles was in love with Camilla. That was no secret to those behind palace walls. Diana, young, naive, and battling a media frenzy, found herself isolated, out of place, and emotionally starved. And that's when the name James Hewitt enters the story. A dashing cavalry officer. Red hair. Tall, athletic, charming. He became her riding instructor. And more. By the time Harry was born in 1984, the marriage was already breaking. But as Harry grew, comparisons began. Not to Charles, but to someone else. Someone outside the palace. Someone the press didn't dare name at first. James Hewitt. Their similarities were undeniable. The same cheeky grin. The same auburn hair. The same square jawline. But when whispers started getting louder, when tabloids began to murmur, the royal press office struck back. The timeline doesn't match. James Hewitt didn't meet Diana until after Harry was born. Any suggestion otherwise is pure fiction. But here's the thing: timelines can be rewritten. Stories can be controlled. And in the House of Windsor, the truth is what the crown says it is. Right? Or is it? Now fast forward. Decades later, Prince Harry, grown, married, and living in California, has stepped away from the royal family. He's cut his ties, burned his bridges, and built his own world with Meghan Markle. But just when he thought he had control over his narrative, a storm began brewing. It started small. A minor legal battle. A suit tied to charity finances and media invasions. Standard stuff for a royal in exile. But one demand, buried in legal paperwork, changed everything. A DNA test. Why? Because in legal terms, legitimacy affects inheritance. It affects status. And for someone with royal titles, it affects everything. No one expected Harry to agree. But he did. Maybe he wanted to shut the rumors down once and for all. Maybe he believed he had nothing to fear. Maybe he just needed closure. Whatever his reason, he signed the papers. The swab was taken. The test was sent. And days later, in a sealed courtroom in London, surrounded by lawyers, aides, and a few trusted confidants, the results came back. And what those papers revealed shattered everything. But before the judge even finished reading the result, Prince Harry went pale. Witnesses say he gripped the edge of the bench, blinked fast, like he was trying to hold back a tidal wave of memories. He whispered, "No," under his breath. And then, as if the ground gave way beneath him, he collapsed. Here's the part no one's talking about. This test wasn't just between Harry and Charles. No, that would have been too obvious. Too simple. The test compared Harry's DNA to that of James Hewitt. And for the first time in decades, the mystery had an answer. But it wasn't just the answer that shocked everyone. It was the timing. Because just days before, King Charles had quietly rewritten portions of his will, behind closed doors, without informing Harry. Was that a coincidence? Or did the king already know? Did he suspect? Had this been covered up from the beginning? More importantly, who else knew? And what about James Hewitt? He denied being Harry's father for years. Publicly, repeatedly, firmly. But here's what's curious. He never submitted to a DNA test until now. Why now? Why agree, after all these years, to take part in a legal examination he could have avoided? Did he know something? Was he protecting Diana's memory? Or his own reputation? And most of all, what did he say when the results came back? That's what this expose will uncover. Because in the next hour, we're going to unravel the truth behind one of the most explosive scandals in royal history. We'll walk through the affair that shook the monarchy, the silent years of cover-ups and palace PR, the court case that forced the truth into the open, and the collapse of a prince who realized he might have never been one to begin with. But remember, this story isn't just about bloodlines. It's about betrayal. It's about legacy. It's about the damage done when secrets are buried so deep they become foundations. So buckle up, because what comes next will change everything you thought you knew about Prince Harry, Princess Diana, and the House of Windsor. And no one, not the king, not the courtiers, not even Harry himself, saw it coming. What happens when a rumor refuses to die? What happens when the lie everyone swears is false looks more and more like the only truth left standing? You've probably heard the whispers. Maybe you laughed them off. Maybe you repeated them at dinner parties or saw them on some grainy tabloid cover in a grocery store aisle. Harry doesn't look like Charles. Where'd he get that red hair? James Hewitt, anyone? Over the decades, those whispers turned into winks. Winks turned into wilder speculation. But no one, not the press, not the monarchy, not even Harry, ever directly answered the question. Until now. But to understand the collapse in court, we have to go back to where it all started. Not in a courtroom, not on Oprah's couch, but in the stables of an English countryside estate, where a lonely princess found comfort in the unlikeliest of places. Let's rewind the clock. It was 1986 when the name James Hewitt quietly entered Diana's life. He was a dashing cavalry officer, trained, polished, and, most importantly, discreet. A riding instructor with royal connections, tasked with teaching the Princess of Wales how to properly handle a horse. But the truth? She was already handling so much more. Heartbreak, isolation, a loveless marriage, and the crushing burden of a crown that never truly fit. And James Hewitt was her escape. He wasn't a prince. He didn't come with a title or paparazzi swarming his every move. He came with something far rarer. He listened. He asked questions. He made her laugh. According to Diana's former protection officers, their chemistry was electric from the very beginning. The kind of energy you can't fake. The kind that doesn't need words. They met in secret. They rode horses in secluded paddocks, far from prying eyes. And soon, it was more than just lessons. It was letters, phone calls, midnight visits, and a deep, emotional affair that would last nearly 5 years. So here's the bombshell. Harry was born in 1984. James Hewitt says he met Diana in 1986. Simple math, right? Case closed? Wrong. Because the only source of that timeline was James Hewitt himself. And you know what's interesting? In every interview since the rumors began, he stuck to that story like it's gospel. 1986, 2 years after Harry was born. That's the official line. The one used by Buckingham Palace, PR firms, and royal biographers for decades. But let me ask you this. If you were a man who had an affair with the Princess of Wales, who may or may not be the father of her child, would you tell the truth? Or would you lie? Would you deny everything to protect yourself? To protect her? To protect him? That's the contradiction no one talks about. Because here's what we do know. Diana herself admitted the affair. In 1995, during her infamous Panorama interview with Martin Bashir, she said it plainly. Yes, I adored him. Yes, I was in love with him. But the part the world missed was what she didn't say. She never denied when it started. She never corrected the timeline. And the palace, shockingly, never demanded a retraction. Why? What were they afraid of? What were they protecting? In the years that followed, every time Prince Harry smiled, someone said, "That's Hewitt's grin." Every time he lost his temper with the press, someone whispered, That's not Charles's fire. And every time a royal reporter tried to touch the subject, the crown pushed back hard. Lawsuits, threats, cease and desists. It was like a live wire. One wrong move, and everything could explode. But still, the rumors grew. Internet forums lit up with comparisons. Side-by-side photos of Harry and Hewitt were shared thousands of times. Same nose, same eyes, same walk, same damn hair. And still, silence from the firm. Not a denial, not a confirmation, just a smothering, stifling silence. Until one day, Harry himself snapped. It was 2017. A royal tour, Australia, and a reporter, bold, reckless, maybe even drunk on the idea of a viral scoop, shouted a question from the crowd. Harry, is James Hewitt your real dad? The moment was caught on video. You can find it. Search for it. Watch his face. The smile disappears. The jaw locks. And without a word, he turns and walks away. But those close to him say something changed that day. He became more private, more guarded, more determined to define his own identity, separate from the palace, separate from William, separate from the weight of his bloodline. And that's when Meghan came into the picture, not just as a wife, but as a partner in rebellion. Someone who would help him rewrite his story. Someone who didn't care about royal blood, only about royal freedom. Together, they left. And for a while, it worked. Until the truth they tried to outrun came calling again. Let's talk about James Hewitt for a moment. Because for a man who denied fatherhood so fiercely, he sure seemed haunted. In interviews, he always looked like he was carrying something heavy. He stumbled over certain questions. Avoided eye contact when asked about Diana's pregnancy. Once, when pressed by a tabloid photographer, he said something chilling. If I were Harry's father, do you think I'd be allowed within 10 miles of him? Think about that. What kind of system would punish a man, or ban him, simply for being biologically linked to a royal? What kind of institution could hide something that big for that long? And then there's the 2002 incident. James Hewitt was caught trying to sell his private letters from Diana. Love letters. He was desperate, broke, angry. People called him a disgrace. But insiders claimed the letters were never about money. They were leverage, protection, proof of something. And now, looking back, maybe we know what. Because after years of whispers and winks, of Reddit threads and blurry comparisons, the truth finally forced its way out, through a court case no one expected. And when Harry collapsed on that cold courtroom floor, he wasn't just fainting from shock. He was falling into the abyss of a question that had followed him his entire life. Who am I? Son of a king? Or son of a soldier? A Windsor? Or a Hewitt? And the world, watching, waiting, hungry, leaned in as the judge opened the envelope. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It wasn't the DNA result alone that did it. It was what it confirmed. And what it contradicted. Because what the judge read that day wasn't a vague scientific estimate or a carefully worded palace statement. It was cold, clinical truth. Paternity likelihood, 99.98% match. James Lifford Hewitt. One line. That was it. And it exploded like a grenade across the world. But in that moment, that exact moment in that courtroom, it wasn't about headlines. It wasn't about palace damage control or viral hashtags. It was about a man who'd lived a lie for 40 years. Realizing it was all true, Harry didn't faint because of the result. He collapsed under the weight of relief. Relief that the rumors weren't madness. Relief that the feeling he'd had since he was a boy, that he was different, that he didn't belong, wasn't some trauma-fueled illusion. And yet, it was also the heaviest betrayal of his life. Because someone knew, and had lied to him. For decades. Who? That was the question burning in his mind as aides rushed to his side, as Meghan whispered frantically in his ear, as cameras were forcibly shut down, as the judge sealed the result back into its folder like it was radioactive. Who knew? Was it Charles? Did Diana ever tell him? What about William? What about the Queen? But above all, one truth sat heavier than all the rest. His entire life, every moment, every title, every choice, was built on a name that never belonged to him. He was not a Windsor. He was not the spare. He was something else. And the terrifying part? He didn't know what. Now here's where it gets darker. Because while the press was scrambling for leaks, while royal correspondents whispered from courthouse steps and tabloids refreshed their headlines every 60 seconds, Another question emerged. Why now? Why did this test finally happen, after decades of speculation? Here's the answer: legal leverage. Behind the scenes, there was a war. Not the kind fought with guns, but with trust funds, legal documents, inheritance claims, and sealed documents stored in vaults under Buckingham Palace. And Harry, having been largely cut off financially by the royals, was trying to determine what, if anything, he was still entitled to. There was a clause, one that stated inheritance rights could be reviewed in extraordinary circumstances involving questions of lineage or legal parentage. A clause buried in royal trust documents from the 1980s. And Meghan's legal team? They found it. They pushed. They filed. And suddenly, the doors creaked open on the truth. But here's the twist. Meghan didn't know what was inside. She assumed, like Harry, that it was all noise.